Have you ever stopped to think about the mysterious beings mentioned in the Bible? The pages of Scripture are filled with fascinating creatures, each carrying deep spiritual meaning. These beings hold secrets that stir our curiosity and spark our imagination, reminding us of a world beyond our own. Number 1, cherubim. Have you ever wondered who guarded the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve were sent away? In Genesis 3:24, after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, cherubim were placed there with a special task: to stand, watch, and prevent anyone from re-entering. These cherubim were not just ordinary beings. They were majestic and powerful, with a complex and awe-inspiring appearance. They were described as having 4 faces, those of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, each representing different aspects of creation and divine authority. Their wings stretched out to cover and protect, creating a barrier of divine presence. In addition to their multiple faces, they wielded flaming swords, which blazed with the intensity of their role, ensuring that the sacred garden remained undisturbed by anyone who might try to enter without permission. This depiction emphasized their role as powerful guardians, entrusted with maintaining the divine boundaries set by God and safeguarding the sanctity of the garden. In this video, we'll delve into the mystery of these beings. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and watch until the end. Cherubim, as mentioned in Exodus 25:18-20, were intricately designed as part of the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant, playing a crucial role in the sacred space of the tabernacle. The mercy seat, which served as the gold cover of the ark, featured 2 cherubim with their wings extended upward and toward each other. These wings stretched over the mercy seat, forming a divine canopy that symbolized God's protection and presence. This positioning of the cherubim emphasized their role as guardians of the sacred space where God's presence was believed to dwell. Their placement and design highlighted their importance in maintaining the sanctity of the divine covenant, underscoring their function in shielding and honoring the most sacred aspects of worship within the tabernacle. In Ezekiel 1:4-28, Ezekiel had a vision where he saw cherubim as part of a grand and amazing scene involving a divine chariot. These cherubim had 4 faces, one like a man, one like a lion, one like an ox, and one like an eagle. They also had 4 wings, and their bodies were covered with eyes, which meant they could see in all directions. The chariot they were part of also had wheels covered with eyes and could move in any direction. This vision showed that cherubim were very powerful beings that helped carry and move God's presence. In Ezekiel 10:1-22, Ezekiel had another vision where the cherubim remained very important. They still had 4 faces and multiple wings, and their bodies were covered with eyes. This time, the cherubim were shown moving and guiding the divine chariot, and they were involved in scenes where God was judging and leaving the temple. This vision highlighted how cherubim acted as messengers and helpers in carrying out God's will and moving between heaven and earth. Number 2, the 24 elders. The Bible mentioned numerous intriguing beings, and one of the most fascinating was the group of 24 elders. These figures were described in a stunning heavenly throne room filled with divine light and power. This place, where the most powerful being in the universe resided, was beyond human understanding. John's visit to the island of Patmos and his subsequent visions, including the one involving the 24 elders, was a remarkable part of the Bible. In the midst of this supernatural realm, John saw a circle of 24 elders dressed in white and wearing golden crowns, seated on thrones around God's main throne. After addressing the 7 churches, John found himself in the very presence of God, seeing him seated on a throne that appeared like precious stones. Surrounding this central throne were 24 other thrones occupied by the 24 elders, who were dressed in white robes and golden crowns. The elders, along with the 4 living creatures around the throne, prostrated themselves before God, casting their crowns before him and proclaiming his worthiness to receive glory, honor, and power, as stated in Revelation 4:1. The book of Revelation did not specifically identify these 24 elders. but it was likely they represented the church. Some believed they might be angelic beings, though this was less likely. The fact that they sat on thrones suggested they reigned with Christ, as the Greek word for elders used here referred to mature men rather than angels, who did not age and thus would not be called elders. Number 3, Behemoth. In the olden days, when the world was still full of mysteries, there was a giant creature called Behemoth. This creature was unlike any other animal on Earth and showed just how powerful and amazing the Creator was. Behemoth was huge and strong, so big it seemed like it was made from the earth itself. Picture a giant animal that could eat grass next to a calm river, surrounded by tall green willows. Even though Behemoth was huge and powerful, it looked very peaceful. Its tail was as thick as a tree, and its bones were as strong as metal, while its muscles were as tough as iron. Behemoth lived in the marshes and among the reeds, enjoying the cool shade of the lotus trees. Even when the rivers were rushing and the Jordan River was flooding, Behemoth stayed calm and steady. This giant beast showed how strength and peace could go together, showing the balance of nature that the Creator made. Seeing Behemoth was like seeing a wonder of the world. It was a sign of the Creator's great skill and control over everything in nature. Even when things seemed wild and out of control, Behemoth showed how everything was really held together in a perfect way. So Behemoth was not just a big animal. It was a living example of the Creator's power and how everything in the world was carefully watched over, no matter how strong or wild it might have been. In Job 40:15-24, God told Job about Behemoth. God said, "Look at Behemoth. It's so big and strong, and I made it just like I made you." Behemoth had a tail like a big tree and bones as strong as metal. It could stay calm even when the river flooded. This showed how powerful and wise I am, because I created Behemoth and everything around it. The creature was depicted as an enormous, herbivorous beast that lived in the marshes and among the willows. Its physical strength and size were unmatched, showcasing divine power and control over the natural world. Number 4, Leviathan. Leviathan was a giant sea monster that lived deep in the dark ocean, far from the eyes of ordinary people. Imagine a huge dragon covered in sparkling, shimmering scales. Leviathan's body was so powerful that it could make the ocean roar and shake with just a flick of its tail. Its enormous teeth were sharp and fearsome, and with a single swish of its tail, it could create massive waves that crashed and tumbled. God called Job and said, "Come and see something amazing." God then showed Job Leviathan, the great sea monster. In Job 41, God said, "Look at Leviathan. It's so strong and fierce, but even this enormous creature was under my control. I created Leviathan, and I am far more powerful than this sea monster." In Psalm 74:14, Leviathan was mentioned again. This time, the story told how God defeated Leviathan. The psalm said that God broke Leviathan's heads and gave its meat to the sea creatures. This story showed that even the mightiest and most terrifying sea monsters were no match for God's power. In the Bible, in Isaiah 27:1, God told them, "One day I will defeat Leviathan completely, like a brave hero winning a great battle." Imagine a grand and heroic scene. A great hero, strong and wise, prepared for a mighty battle against Leviathan. The hero's armor shone brightly, and their sword was sharp and ready. The battle took place in the heart of the ocean, where Leviathan roared and thrashed about. But the hero stood firm and fearless. God promised that this hero would defeat Leviathan once and for all. This meant that Leviathan's power to cause chaos and fear would be completely vanquished. The sea monster would no longer be a source of terror. Instead, God's power would triumph, bringing an end to all the troubles and fears that Leviathan represented. Once Leviathan was defeated, the world would be filled with peace and harmony. The waters would be calm, and the land would flourish. God's promise was that He would restore everything to its perfect state, and His people would live in joy and safety. Number 5, Locusts with scorpion tails. In the book of Revelation, specifically in Revelation 9:1-11, there was a dramatic scene where mysterious and unsettling creatures emerged from the abyss. This happened during the fifth trumpet judgment, a time of great turmoil. These creatures resembled locusts with their small flying bodies and numerous legs, but they had several frightening and unusual features. Instead of just having regular locust legs, they had long, sharp tails like scorpions, which they used to sting and inflict intense pain. On their heads, they wore golden crowns that made them look both royal and terrifying. Their faces, surprisingly, had human-like features, adding to their eerie and unnerving presence. Although their stings were very painful, these creatures were not lethal. They caused suffering but did not bring death. This description highlighted their role as instruments of divine judgment, creating an atmosphere of dread and awe. Number 6. Seraphim. In Isaiah 6:1-7, the Seraphim were depicted as awe-inspiring fiery beings with 6 wings, standing in the presence of God's majestic throne. Each of these heavenly creatures used 2 of their wings to cover their faces in reverence, 2 to cover their feet in humility, and 2 to fly, demonstrating their readiness to serve. Their main role was to proclaim the holiness of God, continuously declaring, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory." This repetition of holy emphasized the perfection and utter separateness of God from all creation. The Seraphim also played a role in purification. When the prophet Isaiah, overwhelmed by his own unworthiness, confessed his sinfulness, one of the Seraphim took a burning coal from the altar and touched Isaiah's lips, symbolically cleansing him. This act not only purified Isaiah, but prepared him to be God's messenger. The Seraphim's presence in this vision underscored the profound holiness of God, their role as protectors of His glory, and the necessary purification of those called to proclaim God's message to the world. Number 7. Nephilim. The Nephilim were described in Genesis 6:1-4 as giants and heroes of old, men of renown, but specific physical descriptions of their appearance were not provided in detail. However, based on their name and context, they were often understood to be large, powerful, and imposing figures. The term Nephilim came from a Hebrew word that could mean fallen ones or giants. The text gave the impression that they were of extraordinary size and strength, which made them feared and famous. Their towering stature and formidable presence likely set them apart from ordinary humans, contributing to their role in spreading wickedness and violence in the ancient world. Later biblical traditions, like in Numbers 13:33, when the Israelite spies reported seeing descendants of the Nephilim in Canaan, described them as giants that made the Israelites feel like grasshoppers by comparison. This suggested their size was so overwhelming that it made others feel small and insignificant in their presence. The Nephilim, mentioned in Genesis 6:1-4, had long been a source of mystery and intrigue. They were described as the offspring of the sons of God, interpreted by some as angels or divine beings, and the daughters of men. This unusual union led to the birth of these mighty beings, often depicted as giants with extraordinary power and influence. Their presence on earth was associated with a time of great chaos and moral corruption. The Bible described them as heroes of old, men of renown, which suggested they were well known and feared by those who lived during that time. However, the Nephilim also brought great wickedness. Their existence seemed to coincide with a rapid increase in sin and violence across the earth, which grieved God and led to His decision to send the Great Flood as a form of divine judgment. The Nephilim's role in this pre-flood world highlighted how their influence contributed to the decline of human morality, marking a time when humanity strayed far from God's original plan. Despite their impressive strength, they ultimately became symbols of human rebellion and the consequences of straying from righteousness. Number 8. The Dragon. In Revelation 12:3-9, the dragon was depicted as a mighty and terrifying creature with 7 heads and 10 horns, symbolizing its immense power in opposition to God's authority. This dragon, often understood as Satan, represented the forces of evil that challenged God's rule and sought to harm his people. The 7 heads and 10 horns reflected the dragon's influence and control over earthly kingdoms, symbolizing the completeness and far-reaching nature of its wickedness. The dragon's actions in this passage included trying to devour the child born to a woman, representing an attempt to destroy the Messiah or God's chosen people. Despite its strength, the dragon was defeated in a great battle in heaven, led by the archangel Michael and his angels. The dragon was cast down to the earth, along with the angels who followed it, marking the beginning of a cosmic struggle between good and evil. This fall from heaven symbolized the weakening of evil's power and its removal from a place of authority in the divine realm. The passage reflected the ongoing battle between God's kingdom and the forces of darkness, but also assured readers of the dragon's inevitable defeat. In Revelation 21:1-3, the dragon's story continued with its ultimate capture and binding. An angel descended from heaven with a great chain, seizing the dragon and throwing it into the abyss, where it was imprisoned for 1,000 years. This event demonstrated the final and complete triumph of God's kingdom over evil. The binding of the dragon symbolized the removal of its ability to deceive the nations and cause harm during this period, emphasizing that God's power was absolute and that evil's influence was temporary. Number 9. 4 living creatures. In Ezekiel 1:5-14, Ezekiel saw a vision of 4 living creatures that were part of a grand, divine chariot. These creatures had a complex and awe-inspiring appearance, each with 4 faces, one of a human, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Their faces represented different aspects of creation. The human symbolized intelligence, the lion represented strength and royalty, the ox symbolized service and power, and the eagle represented freedom and swiftness. Together, these creatures reflected the fullness of creation under God's authority, and they played a crucial role in carrying and moving the divine chariot, symbolizing God's presence and his ability to act in the world. In Revelation 4:6-8, similar creatures appeared around the throne of God, continuously worshiping him. Like the creatures in Ezekiel's vision, these beings also had multiple faces, those of a lion, an ox, a human, and an eagle, once again symbolizing the diverse and all-encompassing aspects of creation. However, in this context, they were primarily focused on worshiping and glorifying God. Their constant declaration of, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty," emphasized God's eternal nature, his majesty, and his sovereignty over all creation. If you enjoyed this deep dive into these extraordinary figures, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share your comments below and let us know which biblical beings intrigue you the most. Also, feel free to share this video with friends and family who might find it interesting. Your support helps us bring more content like this to you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.